The rain hit Fort Benning's motor pool like handfuls of gravel, clattering against sheet metal roofs and bouncing off puddles that had swallowed half the concrete. Inside Bay 12, the fluorescent lights flickered over the hunched figure of Eli Turner, 78 years old, narrow frame, deeply weathered face, neatly trimmed white beard, faded red work shirt, worn blue jeans, and scuffed brown boots. His hands, scarred, trembling slightly but still precise, tightened a bolt beneath a Humvee engine. Been working quietly since dawn, sweeping floors, sorting tools, repairing whatever the young mechanics broke. No one paid him much attention. No one asked who he used to be. The first shout came sharp and disrespectful. "Hey, old man!" Two Army MPs, both early 30s, entered the bay with wet uniforms and inflated egos. Staff Sergeant Cole Benton, broad-shouldered and smirking, pointed a gloved hand at Eli. "You can't just wander onto restricted property. Where's your authorization?" Eli wiped a bead of rain from his brow, calm as ever. "I work here," he said quietly. "Been here a while." The second MP, Sergeant Lewis, scoffed. "Doing what? Breathing on equipment until it rusts?" Laughter echoed across the bay. A few young mechanics nearby glanced over, unsure but unwilling to intervene. Rain hammered the roof harder, drowning their hesitation. Benton stepped closer, grabbing Eli's faded red shoulder. "Show me your ID or you're out. Last thing we need is some relic-breaking stuff." Eli gently pulled free, not confrontational, just tired. "My credentials are in the office. You can." "No," Benton snapped. "You don't tell an MP anything. We tell you." Lewis circled behind Eli, spotting the old grease-stained lanyard on the tool cart. "This is ancient," he said, lifting it like garbage. "Expired 10 years ago." He tossed it onto the wet floor. Eli's face didn't shift, just a long, quiet breath. "That's not necessary, son." "Don't call me son," Benton barked. "Matter fact, drop the wrench, hands where I can see them." The entire motor pool fell silent. A couple of privates put down their tools. A corporal straightened up, sensing this was going too far, but no one spoke. No one challenged the MPs. Eli slowly set the wrench down, raising his hands just enough for compliance. The MPs smirked as if they'd conquered something. Lewis leaned in with a sneer. "Tell me, old man, you ever even serve? Or did you just steal that patch on your shirt for attention?" Eli blinked once, the weight of ghosts flickering behind his steel-gray eyes. "Son," he said softly, "I served long before you were born." Benton rolled his eyes. "Yeah, doing what?" Eli opened his mouth to answer, but the motor pool door slammed open with the force of a storm. Captain Roman Hale, the battalion's hard-edged commander, stormed in, rain dripping off his uniform. His eyes locked on Eli, and then they widened in shock, almost fear. "My God," he whispered, "that can't be Mr. Turner." The MPs stiffened as Hale stepped forward, posture shifting into something close to reverence. "Sir," the captain breathed, "is that really you?" Should I continue with part 2? Rainwater pooled beneath Captain Hale's boots as he stepped further into the bay, his face caught between disbelief and urgency. The young mechanic straightened instinctively, not because Hale demanded it, but because something in his expression said the world had just tilted. The two MPs glanced at each other, confused. Benton forced a stiff posture. "Sir, we were detaining this civilian. He doesn't have authorization," and Hale didn't even look at him. "You put your hands on him." His voice was low, cold, deadly calm. Lewis swallowed. "Sir, we didn't know who he was." Hale turned slowly, eyes flicking over Eli Turner's weathered face, the creases, the scars, the white beard, the faded red shirt that had seen more oil spills and long nights than any mechanic in the building. "No," Hale said, almost whispering. "You wouldn't know because men like him don't brag." Eli exhaled a long, tired breath. "Roman, I told you to stop calling me sir years ago." A murmur went through the room. The MPs stiffened. The mechanics exchanged glances. Captain Hale ignoring rank protocol for a janitor, a mechanic, a nobody. Benton stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, he's a civilian contractor." Hale turned with a stare sharp enough to cut steel. "Staff Sergeant, do you know the name Turner?" Benton frowned. "No, sir." Hale dropped his voice. "Then let me educate you before you embarrass yourself any further." He reached for Eli's shoulder gently, almost reverently, and turned him slightly so the MPs could see the faint, worn olive gold patch sewn into the sleeve of his work shirt. A triangular symbol, edges frayed, colors faded nearly gray, a unit patch that should not have existed publicly. Lewis squinted. "What unit is that? Never seen it." Hale let the silence linger a moment, the kind that makes men stand straighter without knowing why. "Because," Hale said, "it belonged to a detachment that wasn't supposed to exist." Benton's face tightened. "Sir, are you saying—" "Eli Turner," Hale continued, voice steady, "served in Project Revenant." The bay went silent. The younger soldiers looked at each other, puzzled. But the older NCOs, men in their 40s who had studied military history, went pale. One even took a step back. "No way," a staff sergeant whispered, eyes wide. "That program was real." Hale nodded. "It was real. And he was one of them." Eli lowered his eyes, uncomfortable under the attention. Rain pounded the metal roof like distant gunfire. The MPs shifted uneasily, sensing the shift but not understanding it fully. "Sir," Benton finally said, voice cracking, I don't know what that means." Hale stared directly into his eyes. "It means this man completed missions we still don't have clearance to read. It means he survived operations listed as entire team lost. It means," Hale paused, voice suddenly heavy, "he saved an entire battalion in Kandahar before your generation even enlisted." Eli flinched slightly, an old memory tightening his jaw. Blood, dust, the screams of pinned soldiers, a ridge exploding with fire, and him alone dragging men down the slopes one by one. Benton's mouth opened, but no words came out. Lewis seemed to shrink into himself. Hale looked at Eli with deep respect. "Mr. Turner, my father served with a man named Ghost One in 1988. He always said that soldier was the bravest he'd ever seen." He took a breath. "He told me that man died." Eli didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. Hale swallowed. "Sir, you're Ghost One, aren't you?" Eli Turner's steel-gray eyes lifted, haunted, tired, but steady. "I was," he said softly, and the entire motor pool froze. Should I continue with part 3? The motor pool seemed to stop breathing. Even the rain outside paused in the soldiers' minds as the weight of those two quiet words, "I was," sank into the concrete. Ghost One, a name whispered across units for decades, a name no one ever expected to attach to a living face. Hale stood frozen, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. His eyes slowly filled, not with fear, not with awe alone, but something deeper. Gratitude, reverence. "Sir," Hale whispered, voice trembling, "my father told stories about you. Said you dragged men out of firefights no one survived. Said you never let fear slow you down, not once." Eli shifted uncomfortably. "Your father gave me more credit than I deserved. I just did what I had to." But in his mind, unbidden, the memories clawed their way forward. Flashback, Kandahar Ridge, 1988 night vision washed the world green. Mortars shook the ground. Eli, 42 years old then, younger but carved from granite, sprinted uphill with 2 wounded soldiers over his shoulders, bullets cracking around him. Flames swallowed an outpost behind him. Radio static screamed, "Ghost One, fall back, fall back!" But he didn't. He turned back again, and again, and again, until there was no one left to save. He could still feel the heat singeing his beard, the weight of dying men in his arms, the thunder of the last explosion that ripped through the ridge. And flashback, Eli blinked, pulling himself back into the present. Hale steadied himself before speaking again. "My father always said if Ghost One was still alive, he'd salute him every day." He swallowed. "So will I." Hale stepped back, spine straightening, boots clicking together, and then he rendered a sharp, flawless salute. The crack of his hand hitting his brow echoed across the bay like a command. Gasps broke out among the younger soldiers. A few mechanics straightened automatically. Even the MPs stiffened out of instinct, though confusion wore on their faces. Eli shook his head softly. "Roman, please, I'm nobody now, just a man trying to stay busy." Hale didn't waver. "You were a soldier when soldiers didn't come back. You were a shadow when shadows were the only line between life and death." Benton finally found his voice, barely more than a whisper. "Sir, we grabbed him. We put our hands on him." Hale's eyes snapped to him. "And you're damn lucky he chose not to react." The words were quiet, but deadly serious. Lewis swallowed hard, looking like he wanted to sink into the floor. A couple of older NCOs stepped forward from the back of the bay, faces pale with recognition. "Captain," one said hoarsely, "my old platoon sergeant in Iraq, he talked about Ghost One, said he saved him in 03. Another spoke. "My uncle said Ghost One walked into an ambush alone and carried out 4 men. Eli closed his eyes, the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. "I didn't do it alone," he said quietly. "I had a team, good men, brave men, most didn't come home." Hale nodded slowly. "And you carried their memory every day since." Benton's eyes drifted to the faded olive gold patch on Eli's sleeve, suddenly understanding its weight. "Sir, we didn't know. We swear we didn't know." Eli looked at them for a long moment. No anger, no pride, only a tired wisdom. "That's the problem," he said softly. "You judged before you asked." Hale turned sharply to the MPs. "Get the battalion commander on the radio. Now, tell him Ghost One is on site." The MPs stumbled
You
as they
actually
fumbled
wear
for
this
radios,
garbage.
panic
Look at this
rising.
pathetic
The motor
fake.
pool exploded into motion. Soldiers
Where'd you even
running,
find this,
NCOs
the
forming
bargain bin?
ranks, officers rushing in from nearby bays because the message spread like wildfire. Ghost One is alive. He's here. Should I continue with part 4? The storm outside intensified, rain slamming the motor pool roof like rolling artillery as soldiers poured in from every direction. Word had already spread across Fort Benning faster than any official radio call ever could. Ghost One is alive. Ghost One is here. Within minutes, the wide bay, once filled with laughter and mockery, transformed into an organized formation of reverence. Mechanics dropped tools. Instructors halted training. Even officers left briefings mid-sentence. They filed in, boots echoing across concrete slick with rainwater, forming crisp lines without being told. Something historic was unfolding, something no one wanted to miss. Lee Turner stood quietly beside the Humvee he'd been repairing moments earlier. His faded red shirt, worn blue jeans, and weathered white beard made him look like any aging contractor. But the eyes, steel gray, haunted and unyielding, belonged to someone who had carried entire wars on his shoulders. Hale stood beside him like a guardian, posture sharp, expression solemn. The bay doors burst open again, this time with controlled precision, not panic. A convoy of Humvees skidded into position, engines idling low. The moment the lead vehicle stopped, an imposing figure stepped out, broad-shouldered, jaw-etched from stone, immaculate uniform soaked by the rain. Lieutenant Colonel Mason Drake, the battalion commander, known for being cold, disciplined, and impossible to shake, except now. Now he looked rattled. His eyes scanned the bay with urgency. Until they landed on Eli, he froze. His chest rose sharply, breath caught in his throat. He took a single step forward, then another, then stopped, because it hit him. The impossible truth. The man from the files marked deceased. The ghost from stories whispered in Ranger School. The figure his own mentor talked about with awe. "Mr. Turner," Drake murmured, voice cracking. "Sir, is it really you?" He shifted, uncomfortable with the spotlight. "I'm just a mechanic now, Colonel." But Drake's expression twisted, part disbelief, part reverence, part shame. Without hesitation, he removed his beret, tucked it under his arm, and snapped into the sharpest salute anyone in that bay had ever seen. A perfectly executed tribute, delivered with the weight of decades of respect. Gasps rippled across the motor pool. Behind Drake, officers and NCOs followed suit, dozens of arms rising in perfect, synchronized motion. The air felt electric. Sacred, soldiers stood ramrod straight, boots together, eyes forward. No one spoke. No one dared. The only sound was rain hammering the concrete. The two MPs, Benton and Lewis, looked like ghosts themselves now, faces drained, hands trembling. Benton took a halting step forward, voice barely functioning. "Sir, we didn't know. We didn't mean." Drake cut him off with a glare sharp enough to pierce armor. "You laid hands on him, on Ghost One." He shook his head, disbelief plain on his face. "If he were 20 years younger, neither of you would be standing." Hale stepped in gently. "Colonel, they didn't know. He's right. They judged before asking." Lee looked at the two younger MPs, tired compassion in his eyes. "You've got a job to do, so did I once." Then he added softly, "Learn from it. Respect is a choice." Drake exhaled, tension easing only slightly. He turned to Eli again. "Sir, command has been looking for you for years. We thought you were gone." Lee's gaze drifted upward as thunder rumbled. "I was," he said quietly, "for a long time." The words hung heavy in the air, then Drake straightened. "Prepare the conference hall, alert the brigade, get the flag detail ready." He turned to Hale. "We're honoring him today." Soldiers snapped into motion instantly. The motor pool began transforming again, this time into a stage set for a legend. Hale looked at Eli. "Sir, ready?" Eli's eyes softened. "No, but I'll go anyway." Because that's what he'd always done. The conference hall had never been this full, not for promotions, not for retirements, not even for generals visiting. Soldiers packed the room shoulder to shoulder, lining the walls, crowding the aisles, filling every seat until the entire space pulsed with quiet anticipation. The storm outside dimmed to a soft rumble, but inside the air shook with something heavier, reverence, history. A living legend, long thought dead, was about to be recognized. Lee Turner stepped inside, his faded red work shirt, blue jeans, and white beard starkly out of place among polished uniforms and crisp berets. Yet somehow he carried himself with a steadiness that dwarfed every decoration in the room. Captain Hale walked beside him, maintaining a respectful half-step back. Lieutenant Colonel Drake stood at the front stage, jaw set, eyes shining with a solemn determination. As Eli entered, the entire room rose to its feet, not with military stiffness, with genuine, bone-deep respect. The kind given to a man who had bled for strangers, carried brothers through hell, and survived what no one else did. Eli paused, momentarily overwhelmed. "I'm just an old mechanic," he muttered under his breath. Hale whispered, "Not today, sir." Drake approached him, carrying a small, worn case, its leather cracked but its hinges gleaming. Soldiers leaned forward as he opened it, revealing a medal rarely seen outside museums. A distinguished service cross, polished and glowing under the stage lights. A murmur swept the hall. Some younger soldiers didn't recognize it. The older NCOs did, and their eyes widened with awe. "This belonged to you," Drake said quietly, lifting the medal with both hands like it was made of glass. "It disappeared from military records when you did." He swallowed hard, memories flickering like ghosts. A ridge on fire. A wounded soldier whispering, "Don't leave me." The explosion that swallowed the night and the silence that followed. "I didn't come here for honors," Eli said softly. "I came here to work." "And you earned far more than work," Drake replied. "You earned the gratitude of everyone standing in this room." Drake nodded to the honor guard. Two soldiers unfurled a deep blue banner embroidered with gold thread, "Project Revenant, Ghost 1." Gasps rippled through the room. Benton and Lewis, the MPs who had harassed him, stood near the front, heads bowed, eyes red. Drake took a slow breath and pinned the Distinguished Service Cross onto Eli's faded red shirt. It looked almost surreal. The highest levels of valor pinned onto sun-bleached cotton worn by a man who never expected acknowledgement. For a moment there was silence. Then, the entire hall erupted into a thunderous, unified salute. Hundreds of arms snapped upward at once. The sound cracked through the air like a rifle volley. Hale's voice, thick with emotion, called out, "Present arms!" The room obeyed. Even the MPs, especially the MPs, held their salutes longer than required. He stood there, still as stone, eyes glistening beneath his white eyebrows. He returned the salute not as a legend, not as a ghost of wars past, but as a man who had carried the weight of others all his life. When the salute finally dropped, Drake leaned in. "Sir, if you ever need anything, this base is yours." Illy nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "Take care of your men, that's all that matters." As the crowd parted to let him pass, the MPs stepped forward. Benton's voice cracked. "Mr. Turner, we're sorry, we didn't know." Lee placed a steady, scarred hand on the young man's shoulder. "Then learn to look deeper," he said gently. "Some of us carry our battles where no one can see." He walked out into the hallway, the storm outside finally easing into silence. But inside Fort Benning, a different kind of storm had passed, one replaced by reverence, awe, and a legend reborn. Because Ghost One had returned, and no one would ever forget his name again.